If your team's still running story points on AI projects, today's guests say that math already broke. Shivam spent 10 years as an operator at companies like Nvidia, Google, and makes the case that traditional TPM tracking can't survive in agentic AI. We get into why human in the loop should really be human in the line, what an actual pilot charter looks like, and her 30, 60, 90 days plan for a mid-sized company starting from zero. Let's get into it. Shivam, thank you for taking time to join the podcast. You have been in many places. You have given speeches at Google I/O, Chief of Staff, AI Agent. Can you give our listener a quick pitch about you to begin with?
I come from a very diverse background, I must say. I spent 10 years in strategy consulting, 10 years in an operator role. Uh, and so I bring both the ability to wear multiple hats, but also get into the trenches and get work done. Over the past 20 years, I've focused a lot on business systems, enterprise systems, CRM technologies, configure pricing and coding platforms. More recently at NVIDIA, I was managing employee experience platforms. I really like anything enterprise. And given that the AI mandate currently is resting in the hands of enterprise giants, I consider myself fortunate to be right in front row of that theater, enjoying the evolution of this industry from where things have been and how I've observed it in the last 20 years to where things are actually heading.
I like how you put it, center of arena theater. I'm curious, at the point of intersection you are standing, how do you see AI evolving from AI to agentic AI, and what's the future looking from your perspective?
Well, I think none of us should have the right to opine on the state of play because it is still evolving. It's going to change. Perhaps after you finish this recording, things will evolve drastically and some new model will come out and we wouldn't know if we're still operating in the same space. But definitely the concept has evolved into a proof of concept. And from a proof of concept to very solid experimentation and actual incubations that is happening across industries. And we're at the point where the question has finally been asked, and where is the ROI? And is this really driving us to be more productive? And we're in that phase where do we have a very definitive answer? Not really, but all the experimentation, the evolution that you're seeing going from just conversational AI use cases to actually agentic workflows and now to human augmented workflows instead of agent augmented workflows. But the way I see it is we're definitely not going to go back to the way work was done. And it's just a path forward that we have to chart. And it might take a little while for this path to bake more formally.
Totally agree with you around how we are getting from prototype to production and ROI conversations. I'm seeing that more and more in where I stand as well. I'm curious, what are some of the biggest bottleneck you are seeing in the field from your perspective? Why are agents not making to proto to production?
No, it's a great question. Of course, every industry, every team, every organization has its own DNA that will come, sometimes pose a friction, sometimes behave as an accelerator. So there isn't really a one size fits all. But if you have to broadly summarize, I think we're starting with very high expectations. Let's start there. That's my hypothesis is we're expecting magic on day one. And that's really not how any experiment or any new technology behaves. And so there is this learning curve with AI for AI to get to the point of accuracy and results that the world is expecting. So I think when we call something a failure, how long did we try? That's my first question. What was the success measure? Right. So before we go and say that something's failed, and how much human judgment is actually inserted along the way. But again, looking at the broad strokes, I think we fall it in two categories. I would say the quantitative reasons and the qualitative reasons. On the quant reasons, like I said, what is a benchmark? What is a baseline? Where are the numbers? Did you do evals? What are the thresholds you're talking about? On the qualitative side, there is a bunch of things, right? Like your data quality comes in, your organizational readiness comes in, your change management efforts come in. Did you train your organization in the right way? Did you have training and office hours and champions installed to actually make this project a success? And so it's a plethora of reasons why agents fail. And there's not one single bullet and say, mostly things people are, failing at for one reason. But I think it's the just like with any technology transformation, it's a combination of people, process, and technology. Let's not forget the people and process side of things and just expect the technology to play the magic.
Wow, you cover so much gold over there. People, process, and technology. How are you seeing people changing directions in this AI evolution? When is the right time to change the direction? And how, as a leader, you coach others who might be having challenges or success? How do they decide how to evolve their own journey?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of questions packed in there. So let me break it into a few parts and try to address that. The reality is that humans resist change. So when a new technology or a new idea, a new concept, a new leader, a new organizational setup, right, happens, we all resist change. So again, back to first principles, let's acknowledge that. It's very human for us to think that this is here to take our jobs, it's here to disrupt our workflows. And in that, it goes back to just the basics of having confidence in the skills and the judgment that you bring to the table. From where I stand, I actually think that a lot of roles which had become extremely cookie cutter and were getting siloed or labeled as, this is just as a very workflow specific job have now evolved to be much more smarter and much more intelligent roles, right? And I think TPM is a very, very interesting area. I was just speaking to somebody at Google yesterday, and I was telling them about how, I used to look at TPMs and it's like, yes, you're going to organize the summits, you're going to have the team meeting notes, you're going to make sure that the sprint delivers, right? Well, guess what? AI is going to do all of that for you. So here's the beauty of AI. It's going to help you bring that technical judgment, which actually is the reason why the whole ladder of technical program management came through, right? And somewhere behind all the drama of big tech, we'd forgotten that there's a technical judgment piece that you're expected to execute in this role. And so thanks to AI, just as an example, we take the TPM role, which is, it's a magnetic role. It's a glue that is going to hold organizations together and bind them with technical judgment, but also process judgment and deliver outcomes, right? Versus ask the TPM if the sprint XYZ is delayed or not. You know what? You don't need to ask the TPM. You can just query the AI and, if whatever you use, your AI of choice, your copilots, your gleans, and your perplexities can answer that question for you. So what do you then where do you use the TPM? Well, the TPM should be governing and judging where codependencies between projects need to be identified early. Where do we need to go and actually source resources, GPUs, TPUs, whatever, wafers, whatever you use, they are in high demand and very little capacity. So you need to go figure that out. And so the way I look at this is the people aspect is more about how do you A, acknowledge this is here to stay. It's not going to just go away. We can't put the genie back. And B, how are you going to stay relevant in this era? And what subtle skills and attributes of your role AI cannot replace. And focusing on that, bringing those out, making them more pronounced, and let AI be your coworker, a little less seasoned coworker who doesn't have the judgment and organizational context that you do the rest for you. So you actually may have some work life balance associated with it. Having said that, the current temperature in the industry is chaos. I recently wrote about it. I think you probably were referring to that article where I've been I've spoken to over 3 dozen professionals in the Bay Area in the last 3 weeks. And I hear one constant word. It's a chaos. My team's a chaos. My organization is a chaos. This technology is a chaos. And I feel like we are labeling it wrong, which is hyper emphasizing on the chaotic aspect of it is adding more anxiety. I think sometimes you just have to label things right in your mind. This is no different from just how we treat imposter syndrome, right? You just stop telling yourself that you're not competent. And similarly, you just stop telling yourself that AI is here to get your job. And you just outmaster it and outsmart it with your innate skills, which actually landed you the job in the first place.
Very well said. That believe in yourself and use AI as a tool to keep evolving your own journey. And there was a reason why you are here. And yes, there is chaos, and maybe you are absorbing all the chaos as a TPM, but just having that insane amount of belief that you can move it forward. Talk about AI truth. If a CEO wants both savings and productivity gain, can they actually have both? Which one of those leaders secretly prioritize when it comes down to it?
They can have both. They can have even more. They can even make the employees happy. You can have it all, just not at the same time, right? It's a very simple truth of life. The way I look at it is if you are making a process to be more productive, or an organization to be more productive, or a workforce to be more productive, you are going to save time. That's productivity at the end of the day. So productivity is directly correlational to cost. What I find, and this is why there's a nuance in your question, because what I find almost surprising is that the big tech, at least the ones that I flavor, are not comfortable drawing that line very openly, right? Because now you're putting a value on human potential, you're putting a value on human talent and stuff like that. But the fact is, behind the scenes, in spreadsheets, in HR systems where our comp is decided and our perf is decided, you're already putting a value. The part where I've seen organizations struggle is when they say, I want a perfect experience for my employees, for my customers, and everything, and I want the cost to be low, right? And that's why AI is also struggling, right? Because if you have a support agent that is going to answer 70% of your FAQ like questions in a support channel, like maybe a phone channel or a chat channel, that that experience is not the best experience you can give to your customer. Like, let's be honest about that, right? So HR processes are similar. Like we say, we don't need so many HR BPs because we have AI answering all the questions employees have. Well, then the employee is not going to have that confidant they can go to and share something very specific that they want to share about an organization or a leader, because there is, you put AI in the middle, and so the employee experience suffered. And similarly, the customer experience can suffer. The tougher one is productivity or cost and experience. There's definitely a trade-off that you have to achieve that.
What's the single most reason an agentic AI pilot dies before it reaches production?
There can be many reasons. Is that there's not a single silver bullet that can be held accountable for everything that happens. But I personally feel when somebody says we're launching a pilot, there is never a due diligence done on what are you doing the pilot to prove. Because a pilot, when somebody says a pilot, I ask them for a charter. What are you going to try to prove? What is the objective of the pilot? What is your hypothesis that you want to prove with this pilot? And if you don't have an hypothesis, and how are you going to determine if this is successful or not? We don't start with the ground truth. We don't start with what are we trying to solve. We start with like, oh, I have a shiny object. It's called AI. Let me just see what all problems it can solve for me. And so when we say we're running a pilot, it should have a hypothesis. It should have, a duration. How long are you going to run the pilot? Who's going to be the audience? Is it going to be the entire company? Are you going to run it just for the knowledge workers? Are you going to just run it for the developers? Who's the audience for which this pilot is running? What is the success criteria for this pilot? What is the duration for which it should run? And having the guts and the courage to stop the pilot when you get bad results. Right? Very early itself, you will get some indication of like, yeah, this isn't going in the right direction. Okay, well then why do we keep continuing? We should just stop, pivot, experiment. So I think pilots, when they are done to prove that a technology can be of use, will fail. Pilots that are conducted to move the needle on a particular process using a technology that is now made available will be made successful because you have a very tangible goal that you're trying to gather.
A theme you have returned to on this show is that agent fail less from missing data and having that strategic mindset where we are asking tough questions ahead of time. Does that match with how you are seeing transformation across the board when you are advising as well? How does a company actually get its own reasoning into forming an agent or a new hire they can use effectively?
That's a great question. I think we're all learning that what we were calling human in the loop, as like just a last minute check that a human does, is this right or wrong, is actually a more elaborate process. It's not just human in the loop, it's human in the line, not in the loop, right? It's like it starts from the assembly line. As the process starts, you actually have humans who will have to provide some judgment along the way. And yes, over time, AI can actually absorb that judgment and that context of that organization and be able to make autonomous decisions, which human can then just simply say, yes, approved, disapproved. but it's not where things start. There are two parts here. One is I fundamentally believe that if you're trying to deploy AI, you should first fix your processes. Don't start with the technology, start with the process. Right? Like, what are you trying to solve? Are you doing certain steps in a certain way because of the way the technology was available, or because of the way people are trained, or because of the way the people are geographically situated? If you look at this process as it exists today, and now knowing that AI can automate a lot of it, what would you do differently? How would you rework the process? How would you re-engineer the workflow for optimal output, but also for optimal adoption of AI within that workflow? So that work is missing in most organizations, and that's where the leakage happens, right? But the context of the organization is definitely the missing angle in agentic deployments today. And while I don't consider myself to be an ML expert, I personally believe that the combination of graph technology, right, the enterprise graphs that actually build the context for you, with agentic technology, when you pair those two together, that's where the magic is going to start playing more. And there are companies today that do that. And this graph is where the connection of dots happens, right? And they're not perfect. They're very expensive. They're very compute heavy. So no, not a cheap endeavor. But if you are looking for that one missing leg of this table, which is creating that instability, it's the richness of the context that today only a human provides, and we haven't really solved that problem of how to suss out that context from the humans, right? It's difficult, right? When you deal, if you take an example of a deal desk in revenue operations, how a deal gets approved has so many factors. It just might be as simple as that the CRO thinks that this is a long-term investment and that cannot be codified, right? There's no drop-down reason in Salesforce that will tell you that because of this reason selected by the CRO, who by the way would have never entered that feedback in Salesforce themselves, is why this deal was signed and the other deal was not signed. That's a very subtle. You're betting on the future, right? And you're not expecting AI to bet on the future. So how will you compensate for that context? Where is it going to come from? And how will we prepare humans to actually provide that in a non-threatening fashion to AI? I think that's a question to be answered. I don't have an answer. I've seen it work in different ways. I really enjoy companies like Atlassian and Google Workspace Intelligence because those two are actually building the graphs. So when you have a lot of content sources and systems in which content is being generated, connected through these graphs, I think the magic comes alive in those situations where you need long-term modeling and long-term models, not just, first short answers. You need long-term analysis and research. This is more of my personal dissatisfaction with the extent to which humans think they can change the world with AI, right? I really thought that the three areas where this should really just be a game changer would be climate, science overall, but climate specifically, healthcare, defense, and I added a fourth to that, which is education. My LinkedIn feed is at all full of examples from any of these industries. We just keep talking about how Perplexity just made life easy, and Claude is, the savior. And I love all of these technologies. Don't get me wrong; it's fascinating to be a coworker to them. But can we do more? And that's where my urge came from. There should be a non-profit arm to all of this research and this technology that actually advances the humankind forward.
If a mid-sized company, not a hyperscaler, not a startup, come to you wanting to do agentic AI right now, what is the 30, 60, 90-day plan you will walk with them to make sure they have some practical takeaways or roadmap they can lean on?
Yeah, I think given the times you're in, almost everybody has tried something or the other. So I'd actually start my conversations with what have you done so far? And what is the hypothesis on why it failed? Right? That is a very critical question to ask because we often don't want to learn from our failures. We want to just keep marching forward to the next thing. But where I'll start is what have you tried so far? What is the state of automation? Forget agentic, forget AI, just what is the state of automation in the company? What is the health of the data that you have? How federated is your information? How siloed in the different content sources is your data? How secure is your data? Let's not forget there's a very big element to AI, which is once you give access, once you give the key, it just unlocks itself into its own version. And did you really expect people to have access to the information that you're now sharing through AI? And to do a 30-day would be a quick assessment of like what exists today, what have you tried before, and including in that, in the second half of that assessment would be understanding the what is this company trying to achieve with AI. Right, it's the obvious question of, are we trying to reduce the headcount? Are we looking for faster throughput? What industry are you operating in? What are the measures? What does success look like for you? What are you trying to achieve? Because there's a basic education of AI that everybody needs, and then there is a ROI topic. And if you want the basic education, we should not tie an ROI metric to it, right? And I think the basic education matters. I would actually work with the leadership to understand, what do you think is the AI literacy in the organization right now, and benchmark that, because everybody, even if in the organization they're not using AI, at home they might be, right? Maybe helping their kids with ChatGPT homework. So what does the leadership think is the AI literacy of the organization, and benchmark it with a survey or some kind of an assessment to say, well, actually, you think your AI literacy is 80%, but it's only 30%. And so you have to create, before you go out onto the vision and the strategy and all the plans and the ambitions, ground yourself in truth, ground yourself in facts. I believe that is the success measure for any consulting engagement, is you first bring people to the reality, because usually the expectation or their version of truth will differ from your version of analysis, and you don't want them to be surprised with your first reports. So it start with those assessments. The second I look at is, where is it hurting the most? And I actually used this approach and this framework when I was at NVIDIA, because I wanted to see who needs AI the most. Because in a company like NVIDIA, everybody's AI literate, right? So we weren't really driving just for adoption. We wanted to solve some real business use cases. And so if you let's say a software engineering firm and there are 30,000 software engineers in the company, clearly that's not where it's hurting the most. And I identified some knowledge worker pockets, especially in marketing and sales, where there's a team of 3 people. They're handling 300 PR reviews, every month, and it's not going to scale. That 300 actually goes to 3,000 when there are major events, in the industry events. And how are those 3 people going to scale? So now that's a real need, right? I can benchmark that, and any 1%, 2% improvement that you will drive is going to be materially benefiting the bottom line, right? So you have to understand, where is it hurting the most? And what you'll also see in those pockets where it is hurting the most is the appetite for change will be the highest. Because guess what? Those 3 people are waiting for a miracle to happen for them to be able to handle the load that is, coming in front of them. So if you ask them, well, you were doing things a certain way, can we do it in a different way? The appetite for change that they have is much higher than a software engineer whom you're saying that, I know you use this test software, but can you use this other one instead? And by the way, I'm going to train you, I'm going to give you office hours, and then be like, no, this is coming in my way. I have my whole pipeline set up and my whole CI/CD works a certain way. I don't have time for you. But that's not what you're going to hear from those marketing resources who are just very small in number, and they're not getting any budget or no headcount to actually go grow. So I look for those pockets where it is hurting the most, because there the urgency to solve will be the highest, and your probability of success will be higher for change and success. Why? Because they will be more open to change. They'll be more open to the help that can come and transform their ways. Uh, so in 60 days would be identifying those top use cases. This is actually my favorite phase of any project, which is to identify a list of use cases where AI can be such a game changer. And providing that list in a readout to the leadership to say, where do you want to hit first? You can help marketing. This is the impact that AI can actually drive. You can hit sales. This is the impact there. You can go with software. We can go in all directions, right? It's up to you. And whichever we pick, I would start with very quick prototypes and very fast experimentation, right? Because we want to start with that hypothesis that I mentioned, and saying our hypothesis is that if we build a peer review agent, it might be 4 agents that we need, it might be 3 agents that we need. Let's start with the first one and see, did that deflect some of the volume that this team was, facing. And and working with setting up the system. So this is the important part, and I think as a TPM you'll appreciate this. I personally think that any methodology that was being used for capacity management and project tracking should just find its way out the door at this point. I don't know how any of that makes any sense, right? Because if somebody gives me a project plan that says we're going to do 3-month discovery, 4-month, design and 7-month implementation, they're not getting a next chance to talk to me. If anybody is giving you these plans, right, from an implementation partner perspective, they're not the right partner for you. Find somebody who's nimble, agile, small, fast, gets AI, works in a forward deployment fashion, and can actually sit with you, do design sprints, have prototypes ready at the end of the day of a design sprint, and operate, set up the operating mechanism for how that pilot is going to run, how that implementation is going to run. That would what I would achieve in the 30, 60, 90.
What are some of the things on AI product strategy which you have changed from like last 2 years, and how your own AI story has evolved, how you are coaching others?
Oh my goodness, that's a very tough one. This whole fear of security, it exists, yes, but the fact that we are giving such open access to AI, to our very secure, very precious assets, is something I was very stern about. I just thought that the biggest friction for AI is going to be security, but it isn't. It isn't. I mean, the reality is organizations are having to just let go of some of their security principles because the speed at which an organization can move, if you remove that as a friction, is much faster. And that is something which I was very passionate about. And so that's one that I've changed my stance on. And I keep saying that we are one incident away from everything going back to being locked indoors. But I don't see that day coming, to be honestly. Now I think we moved forward from there, and we are really handing over the keys of the kingdom to these frontier model companies and just letting them orchestrate the work for us.
So true. Future is exciting, and just hope it's going in the right direction at this point of time. What's one skill for agentic AI era PMs and TPMs aren't yet trained on and they should learn right now to be successful and get ready for the next steps?
I think people have to just give up on the old models of capacity tracking and velocity tracking and all of that stuff. That just doesn't, none of those math apply. That's just the reality. You can get a prototype of an enterprise search out in a month. It's not production ready, but it's ready for feedback from the business. And in the past, I've taken more than 6 to 8 months to deliver even a prototype for something like this. So I think the fastest I did was building a case management prototype in 3 months. And I thought that was fast. But then I saw enterprise search being built even faster. And I was like, gosh, the traditional TPM methods of we're going to design our sprints and follow our methodologies, I just don't see how that's going to survive. So there has to be an AI development methodology that has to be formulated here, which takes into account if we are building, quick prototypes, are we building platforms which scale only at production scale, at 30,000 users, 300,000 users, 3 million users. So depending upon the type of engagement, your methodology of how you develop AI native products is going to evolve. And I don't think there is any training on this. I don't believe there is any thinking being put into how will the Fibonacci still work? Maybe it will. I'm in a point of like, I'm going to question everything about how we have tracked software development. It has to be rethought. It has to be things that took months, takes weeks. So there we go. How are you going to calibrate? And there's no formula that I've seen published anywhere. The second thing, which all of a sudden, when you empower people with AI, you get these really long newsletters of, so much was delivered, so much was done, and all facts listed very nicely in a pretty graphic. That still takes me 7 minutes to read. And it's AI. I'm not asking you to give me an output out of system X and system Y and make it look pretty and make it readable. Or that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for insight. So at the top of any of these newsletters that people send out, or these project reports and these summaries or whatever, steerco notes, should be insight, right? Decision required, risk for, I mean, AI is extremely good at actually anticipating risks. Right? I actually used an agent at work which basically said, which of my projects is susceptible to fail? And I would say, yeah, this one, 3 people are going out on a leave and, you have a transition happening on this one particular thing. I think this is going to have an issue. And I mean, we're living in a world where I can fetch that kind of input on from AI. I'm not interested in reading, what did you deliver in sprint 3? And, how many story points of work was delivered. I want to know if the project is going to launch or not. And right. And so going from using AI to generate graphics to using AI to generate insights and pair it with your human judgment, right? AI will say this will take 6 weeks, and you can still say, well, I can squeeze it because I know there are parallel development happening with teams in, let's say Poland and the US, and this can actually be shipped faster. Everybody should look at the roles and the crafts that they have been married to for several years and embraced and really taken joy in and pride in, and say, where is the human judgment in this? Let's sharpen that and use AI for the rest. But that's not taught in any school. It's not taught in any training. I'm curious who's going to teach that to the next generation.
So true. Like the
Right.
curious mindset will make that judgment sharpen, and having human in the loop, double clicking on that and making sure rest of all is delegated to AI. Where will AI execution mature realistically in 18 months from now?
I love that question. There was a hypothesis there, right? That AI is going to be your co-worker. And I don't think that's far from being true. It's just like an L3 co-worker instead of an L6, although on very good days, actually Claude behaves like an L7 to me. Definitely see a world where agents will be working beside you. I buy that hypothesis because it will happen, but it will be more for the routine tasks. If everybody was floating in an organization, just, creating those TRP reports like in the movie Office Space, then definitely you should be worried about your job. And I think an agent can take over that, and you will have to find something more meaningful to do. But it doesn't make humans redundant. It just gives them an opportunity to sharpen where their judgment matters the most and deploy that for the success of the organization. Of course, the guardrails, the harnesses, security measures, everything is going to become better. I strongly believe that as the industries around this evolve, we're not going to leave these open gaping holes that we currently see. So execution is going to be there, but I think there is this myth of like agents running the world, and we're all going to go on to universal income, and humans will not have anything to do. I actually don't believe that that's going to happen. I mean, I wish that was going to happen in my lifetime, but I think it has to wait for my daughter's generation to really come.
Is there anything we haven't covered yet which you want listeners to take away with?
I think I'll just share my personal philosophy on this. I think there's a ton of skepticism. There's a ton of anxiety, fear. There's a ton of expenditure also associated with AI. And I feel like we're in this phase which we'll all look back. Like 3 years from now, we'll look back in this era of 2026, 2025 to 26 and say, wow, that was some of the most pivotal moments in our lives, where a lot of change happened at a very fast pace, and we all came out of it with a firm understanding of what makes us so uniquely human. And I believe AI throws a wonderful challenge to each of us to go back into our souls and our life philosophies and look for that meaning, look for that purpose that makes us so uniquely human, because AI can't grasp that. I'm pretty confident of that. As you step out in the world, it's very noisy right now. There's a lot of buzz around things. Try to look within to find your reason to be, raison d'etre, as they say, and we'll look back to this era as a very defining moment. Technology made such a big, deep impact, but more as like, wow, that helped me define how uniquely human I am and the critical skills that I bring to the world that no machine, no robot, no agent could actually deliver. And it's a moment of self-reflection more than of survival.
What a great way to end the conversation. Thank you, Shivam. Thank you for taking time to join this conversation. It was a pleasure learning from you.
Thanks for having me. I wish you all the best.
That's the capacity trap. Old tracking model don't survive this shift, and pretending otherwise is the real risk. If this changed how you think about running AI projects, subscribe for more conversations. Until next time, is keep building and bring someone along for the ride.